Hello, so I thought I'd make a video on how to make the crown on this cake. No templates needed, and I've tried to keep it as simple as possible and easy to follow. So I'm going to use a 5-inch round cake dummy. I've covered it in a piece of parchment paper and just tape it at the back to hold it in place. It's easy to work on this so your crown doesn't stick to what you're making. I then placed my dummy in a small little tray just to hold it in place so it doesn't move while I'm working on it. It's much easier if it doesn't move. So I've coloured my Saracino modelling paste with a little bit of sugarflair autumn gold just to have a base colour to paint on. It's always easier if you've got a base colour if you're doing a gold so that it shows up a bit better. As you can see, I'm rolling a long sausage shape, but I'm pointing it on the edges. I use my smoother to just kind of get it a little bit even, and then I'm cutting this in half. The reason I'm making this so that I cut it in half so you've got a flat back, I find it sits much better on the cake dummy while you're building it up. So that's the base for the crown, and then the piece from the other side that I've cut, I'm just stretching the end pieces to make them a little bit pointier because I'm going to make a heart shape from this. So I'm obviously curling just the pieces in and bending it around to make a heart shape here. So I tend to make the two pieces together so I can see where I'm at for the design and get it to match up. As you can see, I'm crossing them over here so I can see where I need to cut my paste. My heart still doesn't feel quite right there, so I just adjust accordingly so that I have an even heart before I actually stick this on the tiara. You can see there that I'm just finalizing just the last little cut before putting it on. So I use a sugar glue to attach this, and I make my sugar glue with a little bit of fondant melted with hot water, and I stick this on to the crown. And then you get your second piece and obviously match it up and get your heart shape on the crown started. So this is the middle of your crown, and we're going to work each side of this from now on. And that's the best way to try and get a sort of a balanced tiara so you've got even sides. It's not going to be perfectly even, but I found this was the best way to do it. So each time I'm rolling a piece of modeling paste and I slice it in half. The reason I keep doing this is so that you have two even pieces. I obviously used my smoother there just to make sure that I had it as straight as possible. Like I said, they're not going to be perfectly equal, but they're as near as you can get them. So here I decided I was going to come up the sides with a curl, but obviously that piece is too long. So I decided to actually cut that piece in half and then curl it and add it in. I'm pinching the one end that was a bit straight because I needed to kind of tuck in next to the curve of the heart. So a little bit of sugar glue, feed it up around the heart, and then curl it back a little bit to create a little design. And obviously repeat on the other side too. I do use my Dresden tool just to tuck the icing in. That's probably the only tool other than a knife that I actually use in this video. I've already stuck the other side on and I'm bending it over, obviously trying to get them as close as possible to each side so that they look as equal as possible. So for the next piece, I'm going to cut two tiny little pieces because I want to put them at the top of the heart so that they fold over, because we're going to make a little heart to fit in there between the curls. So obviously again you try and sort of match them up. I was trying to figure out here which way I actually needed to cut, or which angle I needed to cut. You can cut it longer and then just test it on your heart first and then adjust as you need to adjust. And you don't need a lot of glue, and that's one of the reasons I actually work on parchment paper, because if a little bit of glue goes on the back of it, you can peel the parchment paper off the back and without ruining the crown itself. So you can see with this one, it was a little bit too long and it wasn't quite matching, so I just trimmed it off again. Again, use a Dresden tool to help curl around the edges. Now I'm going to show you how to make a heart. I start with a teardrop shape and then flatten it a little bit, and then I'm going to use my Dresden tool to make the little dent in the top of the heart. I don't even know what you'd call that. Use your fingers to round it nicely and flatten out the edges, and obviously just check for size that it's going to fit. I ended up obviously stretching it a little bit and making it pointier on the bottom so it fits between the top of the heart, and I've put my curls back a little bit so that it fits nicely, and obviously a little bit of glue to make sure it sticks nicely in there. Now I'm going to make slight sort of leaf shapes to put on each side. So I rolled a ball and then I've shaped it with my hands into kind of like a puffy leaf shape and cut that in half again so that we have equal pieces. It's the best way for doing double-sided things is to cut it in half so you've got them as equal as possible. And then obviously you just adjust with your fingers if you want it a little bit pointier or you want it rounder. And then I've tucked it in there with a little bit of glue, and obviously do the other side too. It is easier if you're doing one side and then the other, and then one side and then the other, because you can see it sort of coming together and it keeps it nice and even between the design. So for my next piece, I'm rolling this and only keeping it pointy one side and a little bit thicker on the other side. I'm going to do some curls coming up from the end of the tiara, coming in towards the leaf. And again, I kind of do these together on my mat before actually putting them onto my tiara, just so that I can see they're as even as possible. So when I've curled these over, what I'm going to do is I take my knife and I trim along the bottom of this, just to cut a bit of the roundness off, so that it will actually sit flush on the tiara base that I've made. Little bit of glue, and then I'm going to stick it on and then bring it up against the leaf and just tuck it in there so that it's nice and smooth, and then repeat on the other side so that you've got the curls on both sides. So for the next part, again, you're going to go really thin here. They do get thinner as you work, but if you've got a really sharp knife, it does help. Obviously, you need something a bit longer than a craft knife. So I'm just adding a bit of detail onto the heart part here. I just wanted it to stand out a little bit more. So I've rolled really thin pieces, used a little bit of glue, and I'm threading this around and down onto the curls. Rather feed it down. As you can see, I've got a little bit at the bottom there. I'm going to cut that off, but I just wanted to make sure it fitted first before sticking it properly in place. So you do one side and then obviously repeat on the other. I just thought this gave it a little bit more of a 3D effect, just gave it a bit more detail on the actual tiara. I've made another heart, and I'm using my Dresden tool to make a little V shape to fit the heart into, to fit onto the tiara. And then I've made two tinier little leaves, or sorry, smaller little leaves, and I've stuck them on the leaf part again to bring it out a little bit more, to give it a bit more detail. I just felt like it needed it. I wanted to add a few more curls onto the, or scrolls onto the crown itself. So I've gone a bit thinner with this one, and you will see that when I put it onto the actual crown, I decided I didn't like the way I was putting it on, so I switched it around. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You can do any design you want, because there's no template you have to work off. You can add as much as you like. So I first brought it in towards the heart, but then I decided I actually didn't like it, and so I took it off and I decided to actually stick it going the other way. I thought it looked better going the other way on the heart. So again, I've just kind of curved it up along the sides of the original heart, and then just used little bits of glue to stick it in place. I did leave this to dry for about 36 hours before taking it off here anyway, so give it good drying time. Now I've got two very small thin little pieces here. I just wanted to add a bit more detail under the bottom heart with some extra little pieces, and these are very, very fine, but again, I'm doing them together so that you can actually sort of see that they are looking the same before actually adding them. So I added a bit more of a curve on them because I wanted them to kind of come out from the bottom of the heart and up onto the tiara base. Again, it's just for extra detail. You can add more along there if you want to. You can do some more coming from the bottom of that curve. I just wanted to keep it simple but pretty without too much detail. Just something pretty basically. So I've done tiny little pieces here, and I'm just going to add some extra line detail to the heart at the top. This was a bit fiddly to do, but again, it's worth it. It's just that added detail, and use the Dresden tool to just kind of tuck it in and neaten it up nicely while you're busy working. And that's my tiara done. I was lucky when I did decide to take it off, it just came off instantly, but I have had a problem before where it's actually stuck to the parchment paper because of a little bit of glue. Just cut the back where the tape is and peel the parchment off, and it's nice and easy. I'd actually made 2 crowns this week, and I use Faye Cahill Signature Gold to paint this, and I use Nielsen-Massey lemon extract. You can obviously use Rejuvenator, spirit, you can use some vodka. I personally prefer the lemon extract because it gives really good coverage. And obviously just get started with your painting. This is why it's good to have a base color. If you were painting on white, you'd have to add quite a bit more. You're going to have to, at some point when it's a bit drier, pick it up, and you're going to have to kind of tilt it up so you can see all the parts that you missed that you don't see when you're looking down at it, because it's got quite a few little grooves. So it took me about 2 layers of painting. And obviously you will be able to see my hands get absolutely covered in the paint, but this is nice and dry. Obviously just go carefully. I used a soft round tip brush, so it wasn't too harsh with the painting. And that's your painted tiara. And as you can see, I did do another one too, but I didn't use that one. And the finished cake with the tiara on the top. I hope you enjoyed this.